Hi, thanks for tuning in. Today we're going to be looking at a SIG P320 with a trigger job done by Bruce Gray of Gray Guns Inc. And as some of you may or may not know, Bruce is one of the premier SIG pistol smiths in the world, if not the premier SIG pistol smith in the world. He's been working on SIGs since probably before I was born, and his trigger jobs are absolutely phenomenal. This is the P320, it's their new polymer gun. I'd heard a lot about it, seen a few of them. SIG put a lot of team members out there, and it's put a lot back into the USPSA and IDPA sports. So I wanted to try one out. I picked up a gun on law enforcement pricing since I'm an NRA instructor, so I got the first responder pricing, and I ended up picking up a 40. And I got it. The trigger was really good out of the factory. It felt like it was about 5.5 pounds. I got a trigger pull gauge on it. It was really about 7. I still grouped very well, and I've got a pretty good trigger controllability, but I wanted something a little bit better because I do plan to shoot this in competition for USPSA and IDPA this year. So I sent the gun to Bruce, and it came back, and it felt absolutely phenomenal. I have a factory recoil spring in it right now, and when I pull the trigger, the take-up that was there before used to be a little bit gritty, and now it is just the weight of my finger. There's a smooth break, and then the reset has been cut almost in half. And it's not quite as positive as of a click as the other one, but it's still a good solid push to the back of your finger as it resets. Everything about this trigger, everything about the internal mechanism feels 10 times better. This is the receipt where I paid for the trigger job. It's the competition action cleanup perfection for the SIG P320. I actually have the large grip frame, which feels better. I'll be doing a video on how to pick the right grip frame and grip size for you here in a little bit. But the best part of it is when there is a mistake, I know that it was made by me. And everybody that I've talked to so far, that I've shown the gun to, that it's not a competitive shooter. So you spent how much on a trigger job? Well, first of all, it's not just a trigger job. It's an action perfection. It's a cleanup. That, and the action is also removable. So even if I don't shoot a 40 for long, which I'll shoot some for limited, but it will also be production. This will be the same trigger chassis that goes with the same with this gun. Pretty much any gun that I shoot that's a 320 in any sport. So we pull these out, and this is the trigger chassis. This is the frame and chassis of the gun. That will go in any 320, large frame, compacts. If I want to shoot a backup gun division, the very small gun, I can get a SIG P320 subcompact. That same trigger works. If I want to get the full size 9mm, that trigger kit works. So while it's a trigger job on one gun that is $300, it's not like a trigger kit for a SIG 226 that's $300 is just for the 226. This fits in any 320 out there, the 9, the 45. If I want to go with 357 SIG, I probably wouldn't go with this light of a trigger on a carry gun, but it's important to me to have the internals as good as possible. The other part about it, with the action cleanup, you did have a gun that was mass produced, though they're almost all great guns, but now you have a world-class pistol smith that just went over that gun and made sure everything is right inside of it too. So we slide the trigger back in, and as we put the takedown pin back in. So the best part about this trigger job is the fact that it goes with me to my production gun, to my limited gun. If I were to choose carry optics or open, either one, and it has a phenomenal trigger pull and reset. Now, of course, whenever people will go say, how light is it? They pull the trigger and they're shocked, which I'm totally shocked. I have a Lyman trigger pull gauge. And I will tell you, it honestly does not do the trigger pull justice. I've been working on custom 1911s and 2011s now for about 10 years. I'm not a professional gunsmith by any means, but I've done my own trigger jobs because of the time it takes shipping. That's 3 pounds, 9.2 ounces. Now, the tricky part about this trigger gauge, or any trigger gauge, is where you place it on the trigger. If you place it in the middle of the trigger and pull back, you're going to get 3 pounds, 15 ounces. If you place it down here, you may get a couple ounces less and rock it. But the bottom line is this little hook moves back around on the trigger face. Your finger is going to stay at about the same place. And the way I've always gripped my gun is my finger clear at the bottom of the trigger shoe. So what you have is about a 3.5 pound trigger. To me, it actually feels like about a 2.5 pound trigger. And I recommend anyone who does a gun review or plays with triggers on their guns to buy a trigger pull gauge, because depending upon the amount of play in the trigger, the amount of over travel, the amount of pre-travel, you could say, oh, this trigger feels great. Well, it turns out it's still 4.5 pounds. And the amount of pressure that you put on this trigger also affects other things with the gun. This gun will also be used to shoot targets at 50 to 100 yards. While I can overcome a 6 or 7 pound trigger, it makes it much easier to overcome a 3 pound trigger. It lets your grip stay the same. It lets the gun, once it's fired and come back, be perfectly consistent. And while this gun had a phenomenal trigger on it from the factory, all factory triggers are getting better right now, it wasn't as completely predictable as it is since I've gotten back from Bruce. I feel that $300 is a pretty good bargain. There's another $30 charge, of course, to ship it there and back, which you have about half again as much as you do in the gun. But now you have a trigger that you can switch from one gun to another gun and pretty much use in any size or frame gun that you have. If you have any questions, please post them below. I'll post a couple videos later going over some of the things that make the SIG 320 specific and unique. And I'll also post a few videos on how to determine which grip frames are right for your hand. Thank you, and please click subscribe.